Alrighty, so for CDAs and benchmarks this year for 21-22, overall, I'm really excited about my data and feel like celebrating the students and myself because I feel like we were overall pretty successful. There were still areas that I was able to identify as ways that I could grow or things that I could do differently using data that I got from CDAs and benchmarks. But overall, I'm really proud of the progress that we all made this year. CDAs, I love CDAs. I know it's kind of an unpopular opinion to love district assessments, but I feel like they're super useful in recalibrating and just kind of assessing where I am as a teacher, what is working, what is not working in a short term, just being able to identify in an unbiased, reliable assessment where are they with these like unit or two that's being tested, and what do I need to circle back, what did I do that did not work, what did work. But like I said, it's just a good calibration as a teacher to be able to have that assessment that's made by somebody else but is also reliable, that I know that is aligned to the TEKS and kind of help me make sure that I'm on target. Both of my CDAs, I feel like my scholars scored really well on. I was proud of them. But I was able to use that data to go back and address maybe some misunderstandings or maybe some things that I needed to handle in small groups whenever I was pulling them. So CDAs are super helpful to me, and I would be totally down to have a CDA for every unit. But I understand why we don't, because then we would be testing 24/7. But like I said, I like the idea of having a reliable assessment for the short-term calibration. My beginning of the year assessments are helpful. I did have these students in fourth grade, but that beginning of the year assessment is helpful to know where we are. And then whenever I'm planning units, I can look in and see how in depth I need to go. Maybe there's some things that we're already scoring pretty high on, and we can just briefly address them and then keep going. So that's kind of like the helpful. And then, of course, having that beginning thing or that beginning score to look back and to compare to is also helpful as we progress through the school year. Super excited about benchmark 2 scores. Everybody grew except for one student, and he was having a rough time. But anyways, yeah, overall, everybody grew. Super proud of them. We are really close to already meeting the district goal of the 30, 60, 90. I think we're sitting at 88, 50, 23. I think. No. Yes. Something like that. Something super close. But anyways, my benchmark scores were informative because I was able to, again, make the tutorials based on benchmark scores. I pulled the lower students, and in that section of tutorials, and especially that section of the data, I was able to identify one of the things that, I don't know how I missed it, one of the things that I feel like I can improve upon is my support and content delivery to my ELL students. I noticed that they are at the bottom part of really all of my data, but benchmark 2, they stood out to me, and I didn't see very much growth from them. And 2 of my ELL students were previously taught as well as tested in Spanish. And then this year they transitioned to English, and I feel like there were ways that I could have better supported them looking back to address maybe like the language barriers or the vocabulary that I could have helped build along the way. But moving forward, I feel like I am going to be able to maybe address some of those things before STAR, and then moving forward in future years, having a little bit more awareness of what that looks like in the classroom. Kelly gave me a really good resource, a book that I was able to read, as well as a couple of resources I was able to find online that I feel like will kind of give them that vocabulary support that they need. And then looking into ways in the future how to scaffold things to support them more efficiently. The second group of tutorials, or second group of students that I pulled for tutorials, were students that I identified in quintiles that I felt like they did not belong in. So not necessarily just like last year how I felt like I had neglected my higher students and focusing on just masters. It was more specifically students that I felt like fell in a category that that I felt like they were not necessarily supposed to be in based on my relationship with them and my observations and assessments in class. So that was my second group of tutorials. And with tutorials so far and moving forward, we are going to be looking at the specific TEKs that they need and kind of circling back to address those misunderstandings, as well as like build that vocabulary up so that we can hopefully show major growth. I think overall, one of the things that really contributed to what I feel like was a great year of data specifically was one of my goals going into this year was protecting the integrity and the consistency of my assessments, making sure that they were consistently aligned to the TEKs, as well as consistent rigor. So making sure that they match the TEKs that students were supposed to be learning and will be tested in, but then also making sure that the rigor matched assessments that I felt like were appropriate. So am I preparing them for STAR by giving them STAR format and teaching them how to dissect a STAR question, as well as am I preparing them for a more rigorous style of assessment of short answer and kind of being able to give that claim evidence and reasoning. And so those were kind of my priorities, is making sure that throughout the school year my assessments matched in format, but the content switched out and that the content was aligned to the TEKs. Let's see here. I think the HB 45 tutorials, as well as overall growth as a team, we were able to achieve a lot. My students this year, I feel like I saw them just mature as scholars, as well as with the different tutorials this year, a lot of gaps were being closed. And so work that was happening in other classrooms definitely affected my classroom this year. I'm really proud of the progress that students were able to achieve just across the board. I feel like our reading was really great. Their ability to express themselves writtenly, just like across the board, I'm really proud of the students, but I know that that had an effect on my data. So celebrating that. I think also making sure students were aware of their present level or beginning levels, and then setting goals and checking in on those goals was really helpful this year. But yeah, overall, I'm super proud of my data. I'm super proud of my students. I feel like I'm learning how to use data in a more valuable way. And so I'm proud of that and excited to see more growth in the future. I feel like Kelly is always the most helpful person in the world, and she's able to answer questions and kind of challenge my view when it comes to data. But yeah, this year I'm super proud.